Just trying this out. Let's see if it works and doesn't pick up the mic. Bleh. So I think I'm going to call these commute, like the commute or something. I don't know. I'll come up with it. I'm going to call these the commute, these videos. Kind of like my own mini solo music ed, brass playing, rambling sessions, because I think a lot in the car while I'm driving in between my schools, and there's a lot of thoughts that I have that come into my head about why I teach the way I teach, and things that stick out from, going into whatever school this day, something like that. And I think this is where a lot of my knowledge is going to come out, and it's going to go out to you guys, is where I'm just driving and I'm being less scripted and more just kind of like a guy that teaches band, which is really, at the end of the day, it's pretty much all I am. So I'm a guy that teaches band. Now, the way I teach band is different from the way that, most people think. I'm not a band director at a high school or a middle school. I'm not a fine arts coordinator. I'm just, I hate to say I'm just a guy, but I'm a guy that band directors bring in. I like to think of myself as a music contractor, because that's how I'm taxed and all that. As a teacher, I'm basically an independent contractor that is brought in by the program, and I'm paid by the programs. Which in and of itself is pretty cool. That there are programs that hire professionals on instruments to come in and just make their kids better in a way that they don't have time to do. So I'm filling a need that the program has. It's not whether or not the band director can or can't do it themselves. It's just, in the daily grind of a school day, you kind of can't do that. So I get to do the fun part where I just get to go in, teach music, get paid, and go home. And it's really cool. Even though I've only been doing this now for about a year, I've already seen, across the schools that I've worked with, I've already seen tremendous growth in myself as a musician and teacher, and in my students even more so. And I'm excited for that kind of compound interest. Oh, goodness gracious. People can't drive. But yeah, I'm really excited to see that. And there goes my camera. Hey guys, I'm back. Yeah, so I really can't wait to see the growth of the programs and of the kids that are in those programs over the time that I'm with them. I've already seen a lot of that just being, marching band tech. And that, I think, is where I do my best work, is there. But seeing it inside, like in a concert band context, on an instrument that I started late and got good at quick, I like to see that too. I'm really just rambling. I don't know if I should put this out. I'm going to anyway. It's going to be a long-form YouTube video. What I ramble about in music is going to be varied across all of it. So I want to kind of talk about now, I guess, the video that I made yesterday about my approach to volume and tone. Which, for lack of a better term, is different than some people. Most people. And people call me crazy for it because I teach air support and volume first. Or not even first. I don't think I teach it first. I teach it in conjunction with. I don't teach volume above tone quality. I don't teach volume above proper technique. I don't teach volume above intonation. I teach it in conjunction with tone quality and intonation because it is an integral part of musicality. The groups that I've found to be my favorite to listen to and watch, both marching and concert ensembles, I find myself saying, man, they really got loud. Because playing loud for a sustained amount of time at a seemingly unsustainable dynamic is so impressive. It is so impressive to me. And I see drum corps do it, and I see symphony orchestras do it, and jazz ensembles that you just have these killer players. I don't know a single great musician who can't turn up the heat. And I don't know a single great ensemble, and I've never seen a single great ensemble that can't turn it up. And my mission as a brass instructor, as a music educator, in whatever medium I'm doing that, whether that be what I did today with horn sectionals, or with my one soon-to-be 2 marching bands that I teach in the fall, or the WGI Winds group that I'm a part of, the staff for. There's a level of, I want this to be the greatest thing I've ever done until next year when I do it better. And my approach of teaching the characteristic tone quality, the proper technique of how to get there, does not negate volume. Because as a complete musician, you have to be able to do both. You have to be able to turn it up and play with the same sound that you have when you don't turn it up. And that is why I teach how I teach. Because my goal isn't necessarily competitive success. It's teaching my students to push themselves and to create a complete musician and person out of them while I have the opportunity to be in front of them. And it could be just a perspective thing for me, but I think that gets lost in how a lot of people work today. Because, competitive success, this and that. Using the pedagogical advantage of being in tune and playing with proper technique is the correct way to create volume. It is. But if you don't teach the students, no matter what level you're at, high school, middle school, drum corps, college ensembles, if you don't teach them how to move air through the horn, you can't do the rest of it effectively. The embouchure won't be as strong as it needs to be. The air won't be as involved as it needs to be, and it results in my experience, inefficient playing. Because I have been told over the years to back off, because I am, for lack of a better term, amongst some instructors, that I'm too loud. And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe everybody else is right. Maybe I'm just a unicorn and I can play this loud with a good sound and not everybody can. But that was also wrong, because I was in a horn line this past summer where everybody came up to the level that I was at, or what I was interpreting as a fortissimo, and I guess, for lack of a better term, from my mellow techs and my brass capstan doing my job. And it was the best that horn line had sounded in forever. Actually, I think ever. Across the Corps' history, in my opinion. And it was certainly the best of the 4 horn lines that I had been a part of. Because everybody understood the mission of put sound through the horn. And when you put sound through the horn, then you can shape it and you can make it what it needs to be. Is there dynamic contrast in that group? Yep. We didn't play fortissimo the whole time. But to be heard at fortissimo, you have to play at a real full supported fortissimo. Especially in the outdoor medium. And that is, it seems, where I've gotten most of my pedagogical knowledge as far as that goes, is the outdoor medium. But I think it's even more impressive when a group does it inside. In some cases. I'm thinking back to an LGPE performance evaluation that I watched last year of a group that I worked with. I worked with the French horns. And they're on stage pre-concert warm-up that they were able to do because they were hosting the event They did this unbelievable sounding tone study. And their conductor was telling them to give it some juice. And then they did. And it was impressive. And beyond that, there's this other level that I just remembered. Brass instruments are designed to be played that way. They're designed to be played fully supported, air going through and touching every inch of the horn. So why wouldn't you? You know, when you think about it that way, it's almost like, why wouldn't you want to give it your all? Why wouldn't you want to put as much sound through there as you can when it tells you to on the page? Why wouldn't you want your horn to just be the most free-flowing, efficient thing you've ever played? Why would you want to use bad air? Why would you want to play at a puny dynamic level? And on top of that, another thing I just remembered that I also teach, and that a band director that I work with has said in front of his students several times, mezzo piano does not mean mezzo puny. That same level of air support that you're using to play fortissimo needs to be engaged when you're playing mezzo piano and below as well, because the airstream is more intense due to the decreased aperture size. And if you bottom out the air support on a soft sound, it ceases to exist. So yet another reason why I teach air support and volume, being able to push yourself past what you think is comfortable for you. And you know, I don't even know if I'm saying this right, but I hope I'm getting my point across. Every dynamic level can be heard as it can be played as a big sound. Yeah. Big sound means supported sound. Supported sound means healthy sound. Healthy sound makes big sound. It's kind of like a circle. If you're not putting enough air through the horn, which, at least in the area that I'm at, you have to teach kids to get out of their comfort zone in that regard more often than not. And once they get out of that shell, their comfort zone becomes bigger, and then the sound becomes bigger, and all of a sudden you have a drum corps sounding horn line at a high school. And I think this fall I'm going to have two. I'm going to have two horn lines that are really ripping in the fall, and I can't wait for everybody to see them. Because at the end of the day, I'm proud of those kids for exploring their musicianship and for trying what I tell them to try. Seeing if it works. Sometimes I do something and it doesn't work. Sometimes I have to just word it differently and it works. Sometimes I need to learn more about a topic. You know, I'm talented, knowledgeable, but I am, despite my experience, a young educator, and I don't know everything. But I know enough to where I can really, really make a difference And I know a lot. And I teach a lot that I think goes unnoticed. Which is what makes my style of teaching that I've adopted and the way that I teach the techniques a little polarizing to some. Because if it was all about volume and just playing as loud as I possibly could, or having my kids play as loud as they possibly can with the wrong approach to tone quality, then we would just be a show band blasting rap music. Instead of a moving brass organ that eventually, by the end of the year and by the end of the cycle, the sound becomes. But yeah, that's kind of like an in-depth version of my video clowning somebody. I wasn't really clowning somebody, but I kind of was. About as if volume is not part of musicality. Because it is. Teaching your kids to play up to their potential in all aspects of their playing should be your goal as a music educator, because kids nowadays are starved for confidence. And that's what I love about especially the marching arts side of band, is that you can give them confidence by pushing them past what they think they can do. Because they'll eventually start to do some of that themselves. And you'll sit there as a teacher, you'll stand there in front of their warm-up lot arcs, and you'll hear sounds that you're really proud of. You'll hear the younger ones push too far and make a bad sound. You'll hear that. You'll watch them wrestle with, oh, well, I've never played this loud before. Or I've never put this much effort into my sound before. And they'll be like, man, I don't sound as good as I did a minute ago. But then they get stronger, and that tone with the right guidance and keeping the right approach begins to open up even more. And you're able to take it to that next dynamic level and all that. Yeah, fun little thing.